Hi everyone, welcome to Woolen Spinning. My name is Rachel. This is episode 274. Welcome to this place. We talk all about hand spinning, making our own yarn, hashtag use your hand spun in this space. And I hope that you find something that you are excited about, that you're enjoying, that you're spinning at your wheels or your spindles, whatever tool it is that you work with. As you can see, this is pre-recorded. That is because I am recording this a couple of weeks prior to us departing in late August for our family who lives in rural Ontario. Normally, I would be coming to you from just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia in the Pacific Northwest here in Canada. But at this time of year, we've been trying every year to make an effort to go to our family that is in Ontario, have that week-long visit, spend that time together, especially after not being able to gather and be together for a few years. So that's sort of what we're up to and where we're going and what we're doing. I'm hoping that I can join you guys in the live chat while this is playing. If I can't, it's because we're just off doing things and we're busy as a family and I wasn't able to make it into the live chat. But if I am, hi self, and I'll enjoy spending that time with you guys while the show is running. As you guys know, normally this is a place of, on Tuesday mornings at 10 a.m. Pacific, where we come and we talk about all things hand spinning and hand spinning related, making yarn, like I already said, those things. And starting in September, we will also be coming at the same time every other week to watch the Wool Circle. So I'll be streaming the Wool Circle on the opposite Mondays at 10 a.m. Pacific from now on. There will be the odd one that will have to be rescheduled, just like I have to once in a while reschedule the live stream. That's because life and the kids are home more often than not because of the type of education system that they're in. So it does mean that there are conflicts once in a while. So when that happens, obviously I will update our Google Calendar, which is part of all the share links that you get when you first join Patreon. So I hope that you guys enjoy a premiere episode because we haven't done one for a long time. I don't actually think we've done one in 2003 yet. I think this is the first one, which is pretty incredible. So yeah. I have a lot to share with you today. I have a lot going on. There was a couple of projects that I held back from sharing with you last episode, which was episode 273. And the reason was because last show was so full, I just could not fit anything more into that show. So in today's show, I wanted to chat about my Attune shawl that I cast on. I also wanted to share with you a new project that I've had percolating at the back of my mind for a long time, and I'm really excited about it. I've had Dion kind of whispering in my sort of, just in the background very quietly going, do it. And I'm just, every time I think about it, I'm like, yes, Dion, yes, you're right. I should do it, even though she doesn't actually know about the project yet. But as soon as I talk about it, she's gonna be, yes, do it. So it's from Deep Stash, and I'm excited to share that with you guys. It all came together over the last 6 months in my mind, based on all of the year of color sampling that I've been doing. So all of the year of color stuff that I've been working on and thinking about and organizing and all the little samples that I've been sharing with you guys in the Wool Circle, in Spinning Pearls every month, all the teaching content that gets released for patrons of the show every month. Those vlogs have kind of culminated into me thinking about what I might want to do with that knowledge and with that, all of that sampling in mind, like what could I do with this? And so it's ended up coming together in this project that I sort of have in the back of my mind that I've sort of started working on. So we'll talk about that today. And because I'm recording this before we actually left for Toronto, I actually have worked on this project a little bit more than what I'm going to talk about today. So I've actually physically started the next stage of the sampling process to sort of take it one step further and figure out what it is that I'm going to do with the fiber prep to get this to work. So I'm excited to share that with you. I don't know if we have anything more that I'm going to add into the show, but at this point, those are the things that we will talk about. We will also do community participation, which is always kind of weird when I do it by myself and you guys aren't in the chat. giving people all of the accolades that they deserve for their making, but that's okay. We'll do it anyways. And that'll round out the show for today. So I hope that you enjoy it. A thank you to our sponsor, Brother Drum Carter. They are dedicated to giving you the very best of carding products with a focus on quality, affordability, and customer satisfaction. They are building mill processing equipment, so please stay tuned. Be sure to check out the new products on their website and follow them on Facebook and Instagram at Brother Drum Carter. So before we get into the show, I just wanted to go through all the housekeeping of all the things that are going on here throughout the month of September. It's a lot, and I know it's a lot to put it in the show, but I find stuff gets missed. So without further ado, let's just have a look at all of the groups that are meeting this month and all of the content that will be released so that you guys know what to expect. All right, so the first thing that I need to cover is our let's do the Wool Circle first. So the Wool Circle meets, the Wool Circle is streamed every other Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. So when we're not live streaming like we are right now, the Wool Circle is streaming. So for all patrons who are part of the Wool Circle or higher on Patreon, this is the stream for you. And I just realized that the Wool Circle is actually spelled incorrectly. I'm missing a C. It's going to bother me if I don't fix it right now. So I'm not sure what Rebecca is covering this month just yet because I'm recording this before I'm recording her stuff. But throughout the summer, she did this whole dye studio thing. It was awesome. It was so much fun. It was so well received. Those episodes are available for anybody in the Wool Circle and above over on Patreon. So check out those past episodes while you're waiting for new episodes. And what she did for Diapalooza was basically a how I did, not a how to, but she gives lots of great tips and tricks. She has awesome materials lists of what she used and how she did what she did. So fantastic 4 episodes. She also had a whole series of blog posts that went with it. osbornefiber.com, and you can have a look at the whole shebang and see what she put together. It was phenomenal. So that is what's going on, what sort of went on for the Wool Circle all summer. And if you do go over to patreon.com, you can scroll down, and if you look at the Wool Circle tier on Patreon, you can do a free trial for a week if you've never been a patron of Woolen Spinning before. And that will give you access to just an unbelievable amount of content over the last 5 years. So I hope that you consider it because it keeps the lights on here and it keeps me and Rebecca being able to do what we do. So thank you so much for your support. All right, Year of Color is what we have had going on all year. It is our opportunity to celebrate color. It was an idea that people in the community had around, like, let's do something that brings us all together and that we're working on all year. We've done this in the past with 51 Yarns, with J.C. Boggs Faulkner's book. We've talked about doing it for Sarah Anderson's book, the Book of Yarn Designs, but that feels a little bit big. So I was sort of wondering about maybe doing that in the future, but taking it like chunk by chunk, slowly over a long period of time. So definitely something for us to talk about. In the meantime, our Year of Color stuff is coming out. We're working on the color contrast right now, which you guys all know. And for September, we did Contrast of Saturation. So that content is coming out next week, and that will be dripped out throughout the month, but look for that, it's coming. And then Woolen Spinning Radio is available wherever you get your podcast. It's available for everyone. You do not need to be a patron of the show. It's on iTunes and Spotify and Google Play and Audible and all the places. And this month we actually sat down and talked with Linda Jennings, Color Storms, Rebecca's mom. We had a lovely conversation. It was so great to finally sit down and actually talk to her. So definitely check that out. It's been released. Woolen Spinning Radio comes out on the 1st of every month. As part of the Patreon sort of tiers, there are two groups that are sort of paid for, that are closed groups. One is Spinning Staples, that's run by Rebecca, and one is Queries and Explorations, that is run by myself. Queries runs on Saturday mornings twice a month, on the second and fourth Saturday of the month. Right now, we had to move weekends a little bit because of my schedule and long weekends and where everything was falling. It was just a complete and utter mess. So we just shifted by 1 week, but that is coming up on September 9th. And Spinning Staples is meeting on the 2nd and the 4th Wednesday of every month. And they are sort of looking at all the foundations, all of this staple part of your spinning journey, like establishing a really great foundation, looking at your techniques and all the things that you do in your sort of in that learning journey part of spinning. And that group is meeting on next Wednesday. And if you have any questions about those closed groups and about those tiers on Patreon, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I am more than happy to help you to navigate it, because I know it's confusing. All right, the other thing we've got going on is our Attune Shawl spin along. This is almost done. You guys are almost going to be finished. 10 more days. So our Attune Shawl spin along, knit along, hashtag spin to knit Attune is wrapping up this month in mid-September. People need to post their finished shawls in Ravelry in the FO thread. So please don't forget to do that to enter to win some prizes. And that's been really fun. We'll talk more about my Attune shawl later this show. And finally, what has happened with the Slack channel and just with the Patreon membership in general is that there's been this really organic movement throughout the last few years that has resulted in people stepping forward who have the opportunity, they have the time, they have the resources to keep some of the Zoom groups that we had started during the pandemic going, and they've been just incredible. So thank you to those of you who host these groups. You guys know exactly who you are, and I really appreciate it. And this is my opportunity in the podcast to be able to say thank you. So these groups are open to anybody who is pledging at the Spinning Circle or higher on Patreon. You need to be on Slack for these groups, and the reason is because they need to be safe spaces for people to come together and unapologetically be themselves. And I don't want to have groups running in this community because I can't always attend. And I want to make sure that we have groups running in this community that are inclusive, that are kind, that are respectful, and that people can come as they are from wherever in the world they are. So unfortunately, there isn't a huge diversity in the times of the groups meeting at this time, but I think that that will change over time. So fiber prep and weaving group, they actually alternate. So there's always something on Friday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific, and Dion or Lisa will post in the Slack channel if there's a change to the time. Sometimes they meet as early as 8 a.m. and sometimes they meet as late as 11 a.m. But for the most part, 9 times out of 10, it's 9 a.m. Pacific. Fiber prep group is an excuse to come together and do our fiber prep. Get that stuff done. It is so hard to carve out time sometimes to get that fiber prep done. And then weaving group was a group that kind of emerged over the last couple of years because there are a lot of weavers in our community, and it's a great opportunity to come together and talk specifically about weaving. So that group meets on the opposite Friday. So there's always something. So if you take a Friday off and you've got some time, please come in and say hello. Virtual Spin Group used to be a Patreon tier. It used to be a paid for group. It was one that I ran every Tuesday. And it's a wonderful gathering of people, really wonderful personalities. I had to step back from it back in June, and one of the members graciously offered to continue hosting it as a closed group. And recently, over the course of the summer, I had a real... I was really clinging to that group. It was a wonderful group. We got really, really close over the course of the pandemic and being at home. And I really looked forward to that time. We often would get into quite deep discussions that were sort of a more personal of a more personal nature for many of us. And I finally had to sort of let go of the dream of restarting that group. And I'm not saying never, I'm just saying not right now. And that was really hard for me to sort of let go of. And the person that was hosting it said, you know, I'm happy to keep hosting it and to open it up to everybody. And so that's what we've done. So every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific, Glenda is there to welcome you into the group. And I just want to say an extra special thank you to the three of you for doing that. Glenda, Lisa, and Dion for hosting these groups. These links to the Zoom groups for the Zoom meeting itself are always posted in the Slack channel. So that's where you find the links, and please don't hesitate to jump in if you are part of those tiers on Patreon. That's part of what you pay for when you join the Patreon and when you join the spinning circle specifically is access to these incredible people. Book club is getting up and running once again. So book club usually meets twice a month. It depends on the month and it depends on Becca's schedule. We meet at 12 noon on Mondays. So if that is a time that works for you, definitely think about that. It's 12 noon Pacific. It has to be 8 p.m. GMT. So whatever 8 o'clock is in the UK, when we're sort of at those times of the year where the shifts and the hours haven't quite happened yet, there's always like that little bit of like, are we meeting at 1 p.m. or are we meeting at 12 p.m. or are we meeting at 11 a.m.? It gets kind of confusing for a week or two there, but it doesn't last very long. It's always 8 p.m. GMT. So that kind of clarifies it. It's always that never changes. We are having some discussions about what we're going to sort of study next. We're torn between Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. It's one of her, I think it's her newest book or one of her newest books. Or The Crow Eaters by Bapsi Sidwa, which is actually a book that's been on Becca's list for a very long time. We're probably going to read both. We're just deciding how we want to go about that. If we want to start in India with The Crow Eaters, or if we want to start with David Copperfield, and then move to Demon Copperhead, because those two books, Demon Copperhead is written based on David Copperfield. So we were thinking about kind of doing a bit of a book study, and starting with Dickens and then moving through to Barbara's book. So that is upcoming. If you are looking for book club and you cannot find it because you're in the Slack channel and you're only in the channel called #general, you need to just click on the channel #books. And often there's cross posting and linking and stuff. So because people are talking about things that go back and forth. So somebody will help you if you can't find the channel #books. I have also posted, over the last few weeks, I was able to sit down and post 2 tutorials for patrons of the show. I posted them in the Slack channel, and I will post some posts on Patreon for patrons of the show. Just a quick and dirty how to use the Slack channel. Once you sign up, like once you get your invite and you've got your password and you've signed in, then what? So that is posted on Patreon. And the other thing, I had quite a few requests for how to use Ravelry. There's a lot of people out there that are newer to Ravelry and they've just started using it and they're not super familiar with it. So there's also a tutorial on there for Ravelry. I'm not saying I love Ravelry. There's things about Ravelry that I find really frustrating, but as part of my workflow, my project notebook has been part of what I have been making and what I've been creating now for like almost 20 years. So I just did a tutorial on how to use Ravelry just to help people to navigate how to get to the group, how you could use your notebook more effectively, how to use your queue, and where you can find things. So for those who that might be useful for, please go ahead and check that out as well. I'll link both of those down below for you guys. And about Ravelry too, for those of you who are a little bit leery about Ravelry, maybe you've heard that there's bouncing emojis and a bunch of stuff, and it might trigger a headache, or it might sort of, you might find it visually jarring. I have not included in the video any of that. So the only screens of Ravelry that I've shown are the static screens that just are backed. It's just white with the banner and the information. So I made sure that it didn't include any of the graphics that seem to be really triggering for certain people with that find the visual disturbances really triggering for them. So I did not include any of that. You won't see any of that on the video, just to make sure that you guys know that it's safe to watch for those who are triggered. I think that's it for housekeeping. All right, let's get into sort of the, I think it's the sampling that I've been doing at home that I'm really excited to share with you guys. So let's get into that. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to share with you was a little sample skein that I've been working on in the background. As you guys know, I've been working on a really intentional approach to my stash and really trying to stash down very intentionally. So what I did was I've started to sort of take an inventory of my stash, and that is actually available in a shared form on Google Sheets. And if you're looking for that link, it will be down below in the show notes if you have not seen how I organize my stash and keep track of it. It's not up to date currently. The reason is because I had made a commitment to myself that every December I would go through my stash in the middle of the winter, make sure there's no critters, no moths, because I have had moths recently. But in the cold, go through it and reorganize it and make sure that everything is where I say that it is. I have made progress. I have actually managed so far to empty 2 bins out of, I think I have like 22 or 24, so I'm getting there. My goal is to get down to below 20 bins at a time, and that's mostly just because I do need to have a certain amount of fiber on hand at all times. I don't need to have all the fiber all the time though, and getting the moths really kind of wakened me up to the fact that I really need to be going through my stash regularly, airing it out. And as my friend Diana Twist always says, a living, breathing stash where you have things coming in and you have things going out, and that's the goal. So because I've been looking through my stash quite regularly and I've been sort of checking in on things regularly, I've had this ruminating at the back of my mind for quite a long time, and the Year of Color has given me the confidence to go forward and to do this. So without further ado, let's talk about what I am spinning. So I went through my stash. I found the braids because I couldn't find them at first. And let me share with you the photos so that you can see something pretty while I'm talking and not just staring at my ugly mug. Here is what I found in my stash. So this has been ruminating for a very long time. So bear with me and bear with me as I explain the process. So this blue is actually 2 4-ounce skeins or 2 4-ounce braids. They're not braided. Katrina just wound them up for me, but they're 2 4-ounce braids of one of Katrina's colorways that's blue, and I can't remember the name of it. I will find out. I just have to look at her website and refresh my memory. It is on Target. It has been in my stash for a number of years. I bought it when I first got my e-spinner, and my plan was to spin yardage for a sweater to put with another yarn in my stash that I had spun from the same dyer, which always coordinates really super well. And I was going to use the beautiful skein that I had already spun, was going to go with this, and they were going to make color work and they were going to be perfect together, and I just never got this part spun. And instead I used fingering weight Tough and Tender from Katrina in this colorway to knit a shawl. With the other colorway that I had already spun. It was for the Wheeler, for Ashford Looms and Wheels, and I just kind of never looked back. I put this in my stash and I didn't really look at it again. Because it's been compacted in my stash for a few years now, for a number of years now, it's not the nicest anymore. It needs to be opened up. It needs just some air added to it. I need to soak it and get it just opened up again, breathe some life back into it. And the other one is Smith & U Polworth and Silk. And I bought this when at the beginning of the pandemic, when everything was shut down. I wanted to make sure that my favorite indie dyers were still there, that they were still doing their thing at the end of the pandemic, no matter how long it would last for. And I bought 2 braids of this colorway. So I have 4 in total. And in the back of my mind, I had always kind of thought that the Smith & U braid, it's Polworth and Silk 8515. I sort of thought, I'll use it for something, I'll spin it up, use it for a shawl, yada yada. But we've been doing all of these amazing experiments in the Year of Color, creating mud and carding complements together and creating these whole new colors. And I felt really inspired, and I kept looking at these two braids going, one of my favorite complement skeins that I have spun to date was the orange with the blue. And while the skein of, or while the braid of the Smith & U doesn't have tons and tons and tons of orange, it does read as mostly orange. And because of that green in there, it's going to spin up muddy anyways. No matter what I do with it, it's going to be a wee bit muddy and a little bit gray when I finish it, because all of that combination of that green in there, the brown, the orange is going to make a beautiful skein. I could chain ply it and keep those colors clean. But overall, it is going to be a little bit of a desaturated, muted skein when it's done. So I thought, well, why not just play on that and bring it all to the forefront and bring it up to why not just celebrate that? Why not just embrace that and run with it? And of course, in the back of my mind the whole time, I had Dion. She's one of our very active community members. Her and Lisa run a couple of the groups in the Slack channel. If you are new to woolen spinning and you have just joined, be sure to watch out for Lisa and Dion in the Slack channel, because they are two of the people that you will meet very quickly if you jump into the Zoom groups. They come up every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, or no, 8 a.m. Pacific. I can never remember. They kind of move around a little bit. And then they're usually around for virtual spin group that's hosted by Glenda on Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific. So you'll meet people very quickly. But Dion was talking at me in the back of my mind. I could hear her voice and her wisdom and her just ability to articulate when it comes to color. And I could hear her going, do it. Do it, Rachel, just do it. And I thought, okay, Dion, this one is for you. I'm going to do it. So what I did was, instead of taking all 4 of the braids and just jumping into it like I did with the Combospin for the Sweet Georgia Combospin that I just finished. And if you're not familiar with that, we'll be talking about that later in the show. So don't worry. If you're just watching for the first time and you haven't heard about my recent projects I've been working on, I'll talk about that one in just a moment. I knew what the results were going to be of that one. I wasn't worried about combining those colorways. I knew what would happen. I had already spun that yarn in the past. This, I had not. I have all sorts of 2-gram test skeins. They're hanging behind me on my my warping board because, you know, space. But I had a fairly good idea of what would happen when I combined these 2 braids of fiber. But what I did was I took exactly 5 grams of the blue and I took 5 grams of the Smith & U, the Polworth, the orange, and I carded those together. And I didn't card them together just once and then spin them. I actually carded them together. So for the Sweet Georgia spin, I had just put them through the drum carder once because I still wanted there to be long lengths of clean color in the spun singles. I still wanted the magenta to be apparent. I wanted the teal blue to be apparent. With this, I want a muddy gray skein. I want a whole new color. So let me show you what happened. So first, let me show you what I spun, because you know you get an idea here of what came out of the color. But I just wanted to pause here for a minute. So what ended up happening was I carded up the 10 grams, and I'll have photos and stuff in future episodes to show you a little bit more of the process. Because once I commit to doing this and making this yarn, there will be lots of photos of me carding it, spinning it. We'll have some video, you know, all the regular stuff that you can expect on the podcast. But I had the 10-gram nest of fiber and I carded it through the drum carder a few times because I really wanted it to blend really nicely together. And then the final card, there were still chunks of blue, there were still chunks of orange, and as you can see from these singles, even in the singles, there was still parts of the bat that were quite orange, parts of the bat that were quite blue, and you can see that even just from me breaking down that bat that I did. So with this 10-gram bat, I split it in half, and then I split each half into half again, and I put each of those nests through the carder again. I was not planning a 4-ply by any stretch. What I was actually planning was a 3-ply because that's my favorite kind of yarn. I knew that I didn't want a 2-ply. If I'm going to put in this much effort to spin this much yarn for a sweater, I'm at the point where I am totally into the process. I am just like all about just however long it takes, I want a 4-ply, I want at least a 3-ply for a sweater. And the sweater that I have in the back of my mind that's kind of, ruminating back there is a has a cabled pattern down the front. I'll show that to you in a moment. And so in embracing that, I want the effort of spinning the yarn to reflect to have the structure to be able to handle those cables, because like that makes sense, right? So I took those 4 nests of fiber and I spun them each to their own bobbin on the Lendrum, because what I had planned on doing was just chain plying. When I'm doing a sample and I want a 3-ply, I often will just chain ply. It gives me enough information about what I'm going for and what I'm looking for that a chain plied yarn is good enough for this early sampling process. I don't need to see a traditional 3-ply right off the bat. I need to know if I'm on the right track. So with that in mind, I took each nest and I spun the first bobbin, and I was like, maybe I'll actually spin a second bobbin. I just emptied off all of my Lendrum bobbins. Maybe I'll just swap out bobbins. It's so easy on the Lendrum. I'll just swap out bobbins and do a traditional 3-ply. And then I got to the 4th nest and I was like, I have 4 nests, so shoot. So I did a plyback test, a 3-ply plyback test on one of the final bobbins. I know you can't really see this, but I am holding the plyback test. And I looked at it and I thought, this isn't it. It's a different one. I have a whole bunch of them sitting here. And I looked at this and I thought, it's just not quite thick enough. I like how the singles are spinning up. I like the what they look like. This is very easy to manage. I could foresee myself spinning an entire sweater at this wraps per inch. I don't know exactly what it was, but it's kind of my default spin when I'm dealing with a carded nest of fiber off my drum carder. And I thought, I wonder if it would be a little bit thicker and it would be a little bit more appropriate if I added a 4th single. And lo and behold, I have a 4th nest of fiber and I have a 4th bobbin. So let's see what happens. So that's actually what I did. So I did a 4th bobbin, and let me show you the yarn. So the yarn just was exactly what I thought it would be. It's gray, it's a little bit green because of that yellowy orange, combining with the blue. This is completely relying on optical mixing. Of course, we're looking at this up close. If you were to look at this from a distance, it has more of a khaki green appearance to it. So holding it here against my cream shirt, you can see that it's more of a khaki green appearance. I did close-up shots of this little tester skein though, so that you could see and appreciate the nuance in the yarn. So you can see the blue in there, you can see the gold. And you can see from a distance, if I were wearing this on the podcast right now and I was just chatting with you and it was just what I was wearing, you can see that it reads as a khaki green. And that was exactly what I thought would happen. That was what happened in many of my experiments. And of course, up close, it's just, you can start to see that it's optical mixing, and that I've taken that gold in there has become sort of a khaki green color, and the blue has faded into the background, has taken on almost a denim appearance, and it's still there, but certainly not like it was. And like I said, from a distance, it's reading as a khaki green. The yarn is soft, it's bouncy, it's springy. It's a little bit thin. Problems we all wish we had. It is a wee bit thin. I was looking for an 11 wraps per inch yarn, and this is reading as more of like a 12 or 14 wraps per inch yarn. So I may need to modify my approach a little tiny bit. This might be one of those situations where I knit a larger size on smaller needles. But overall, I'm really, really happy with this initial sample. Now, my plan is to knit a small swatch with this and to just get some feedback about the yarn, see what I like about it, what it looks like in the knitted stitch once it's in that swatch form. The thing is, and I hope that you guys can appreciate this, and that I'm not being nitpicky, so just bear with me here, okay? One of the things that I don't like about these carded yarns, when they're carded up like this and the fiber is a little bit compacted and it's been stored for a really super long time, I don't love that there's often, and it doesn't happen all the time, but throughout the length of a single, you can see it in this photo, there's like bits and pieces of like the carded fiber that didn't break up really nicely. And unless you want to stand there and card and card and card and put it through and put it through and put it through, some of that's just never going to be fixed. So it's just the nature of carded fiber. It's random, and it's not parallel, and it's lots of air added to it and yada yada blah. It's just the nature of the beast. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about is an approach that I've read about quite a bit, and I know other spinners have done it as well. I have never taken the time to do it, but I would really like to try it, where I take this initial fiber and take it in just manageable chunks, and I'll just work through it slowly. And I am going to do another 10-gram sample just to see if it's a process that I even want to participate in and actually commit to process all of this fiber. But basically what I'm thinking about doing is putting it through the drum carder and doing that initial card to get all of the fiber so through that initial blend, and possibly doing that 1 or 2 times and then combing it. It'll result in a little bit more waste, but it'll get rid of some of those little chunkies that develop just when you're carding fiber, and from this fiber being stored for a long time and being a bit compacted and just sort of being a little bit worse for wear. And so I'm just going to play around with that and I will report back. So I am sampling for a specific sweater. So why don't I share that with you next? So right when I hit pause, of course, the garbage truck showed up. So I'm hoping that he doesn't make too much noise. He's just going forward and coming out of our cul-de-sac, so I'm hoping that that'll be okay. So this is Lenu by Anka's Trick, and one of the reasons why I keep coming back to this sweater again and again and again is because when I saw her post this pattern, my initial thought, just like with Joji Locatelli's newspaper pullover, it was the same reaction. I was like, yes. And one of the reasons that I really like this sweater is it has a little bit of structure. It's got saddle shoulders, which I haven't done in the recent past. I haven't done a slightly different shoulder construction for a while. It's kind of been drop shoulder, raglan. I haven't even really done any set-in shoulders for a while. I've done a lot of round neck. So it's kind of in those 3, and I'm just looking for a little bit of variety. It would be nice to have some variety. I have found over the last couple of years, because our winters are getting quite a bit colder, I do wear my sweaters. I do wear my pullovers a lot more than I used to. And actually this past this past winter, we had a couple of cool days where I actually wore one of my sweaters underneath one of my cardigans. And I was like, and it was perfect. I didn't need my parka, but I needed something more than just a cardigan or just a sweater, and it actually worked out really well. So this caught my eye right away. It is a typical pattern. There's a lot of these being published still over the last few years. It's still a really popular approach. You can see the fuzz on her shoulder that's closest to me. It is held double. So it's a lace yarn held with a fingering yarn, and of course it's a mohair silk. That is one advantage. That would be one advantage to leaving this carded, is that it would give me that slight fuzz that of course we're looking for in a sweater like this. The other thing that I had in the back of my mind was adding something hairy to this. Like I've got a whole bunch of gray Angora that I could add, that would just make it like I could add 2%. Like we're talking about just a teeny tiny amount that would just give it that fuzz and that overall kind of nondescript lack of stitch definition that we're looking for in the stockinette fabric. Not so much the cable and lace, but the stockinette fabric on either side of the panel. The back of this sweater has no cable and lace. It's just a plain panel that goes down the back. I may or may not do that. I may just do a stockinette back. It does look nice down the back of the sweater. It gives it a bit of shape, but I may just leave that. There's been a couple of people who have posted with the added neck that you can do. There's a whole like neck and hood that you can do. I don't think that I will do that. It's not really my thing to have a lot up and around my neck anymore. I used to wear a shawl or a pashmina every day. I never didn't have something on my neck. You guys might actually remember that from early episodes in the podcast. I don't like stuff around my neck anymore. I've really changed how I feel about this, and I think it's because I actually get warmer when I have stuff up around my neck. So when I'm cold, I tend to wrap my shawls around, and I really wear my shawls in the winter, which you guys don't see on the podcast, but in real life, I am wearing them. So I don't think that I'll do the neck piece. That's an add-on. It's a separate piece, but I think that I will, I'll stick with everything else in the meantime. The gauge is really nice. It's 19 stitches over 4 inches, so very doable. It's not particularly small, and it's knit on 4mm needles, which is totally doable for my hands. That will be no problem. And because this is a longer term project with all the sampling that I still need to do, I'll be working on this over the next couple weeks to kind of figure out what direction I'm going, and then it's just a matter of getting into the spinning. I do feel really heartened by the fact that my Sweet Georgia Combospin was started June 19th and I finished it August 14th. That's about 2 months of spinning and making. That made me feel like, okay, this is doable. I can absolutely do this in terms of not letting this get too overwhelming. In the end, I had 322 grams of yarn, physical yarn in my hand when I finished that spin. This is 4 braids. I don't think I'm going to need all 4 braids. I hear some giveaways coming. But what I will do is the same thing that I've done for the last few projects, where I start the spinning. Once I decide on the way, like what I'm going to be doing, once I get going with the spinning, then as I spin and as I create yarn, I will cast on the project and spin enough for the project, plus about 10% to put a little skein, something a little bit bigger than this, maybe sort of 15 to 20 grams in my stash to keep a record, but also to have some yarn to fix any problems that come up in the future. That has become very, very important to me after having some critters eat away at a few of my sweaters and having to track down yarn and figure out how in the tarnation I'm going to fix my sweater when I don't have any yarn left. That's what happened with my pink velvet. I'm happy to say I was able to match the color close enough, and that Jameson's still had a coral colored yarn that was close enough to what I knit the sweater in that I was able to fix it. But it was a bit of a gamble, and it was expensive. By the time I bought the yarn, had it shipped, got it, fixed it, it kind of made me smarten up a little bit. So that is my plan. Thank you to Anka for always publishing amazing patterns. I have not knit one of her patterns recently. I have purchased quite a few of her patterns over the years, and I'm really excited about this one. And if I pivot and I change the pattern as I get more into sampling and whatnot, I obviously will let you guys know, but I kind of don't think so. I've had this in the back of my mind for a long time. It's been really interesting this week as the week has progressed, because we're getting closer and closer to going on our trip, and I've been recording, getting this all together, and I've been watching as I've been putting it together in the editing software that like my outfits have changed, what I look like changes, and it's just like the progression of the week. Full disclosure, I'm having some problems with my hip. It's my right hip, and it's affecting my knee. And we've done a couple of really long walks this week, and unfortunately I overdid it. And if you know me, you'd be like, yeah, that's pretty typical. Thinking that like it was sort of getting better, and unfortunately it's slid back and it's not doing very well. So I haven't been sleeping very well. So I suspect as the filming goes on this week, I'm going to look more and more tired. which I generally have a really good sleep and I generally am really well rested. And so this week has been a little bit challenging because I haven't been sleeping well and my leg is hurting. So bear with me. All right, the next thing that I wanted to share with you was knitting. So we'll probably finish off with knitting for this episode today. We'll finish off with this and then we'll go into community participation. So let's do K-nitting and I'll chat with you guys about what I cast on this past couple of weeks. So I've been trying to decide what I'm going to do about this because it's been in the back of my mind for quite a while, the Attune shawl, knit along, and I wanted to do my shawl out of hand spun. So I spun all of the Sweet Georgia Combospin spun yarn. I spun all of that for this along, and we're kind of getting down to the wire because it's supposed to be casting off on September 15th, and I hadn't even started mine. So part of the reason for that was I had spun all of that big Combospin, and then when I was finished the Combospin, I was like, there's so much yardage here. I really want to do a sweater. I haven't made any progress on my sweater. I had cast it on, but really the reason for sort of getting that started before we left was to make sure that yes, in fact, this is what I want to knit. I'm taking it on the plane. So hopefully I'll have some progress on that sweater when we get home. So I have wound up a ball to take on the plane with me. That's what I'll be working on. So for those of you who don't know what the Attune shawl is, it's a shawl designed by Andrea Mowry. She did it in her hand spun, and several people in our community had done the sweater and the shawl with awesome results. And so I reached out to Andrea and was like, hey, could we do an along based on the Attune shawl? And she was like, absolutely. So we do have prizes to offer you guys later in September. We'll be giving those away late September, early October. It depends on how quickly you guys get your FOs into the FO thread in Ravelry. The links are down below, and make sure that you're sharing your finished shawl in the FO thread. And I'm going to send a note to Andrea so that those who are part of her community will know that as well. So I started combing through my stash to see what I maybe wanted to use for my Attune shawl. And I had spun all of this yarn back in 2021. So no, 2022. Let me double check because I'm actually not sure which year it was. Yeah, it was last year, 2022. So there's two sets of yarns here. So I'll just show you which one's which. There is this yarn here, which is my organic Polworth. So this had been in my stash for a very long time. And my plan was to weave with this. So I would spin it all up, put all of the astronomical yardage on the loom, do a big stole, probably do a series of a couple of stoles and some different studies in like maybe some different lace, some different twill studies. But after I had washed and finished it and I folded a little bit, it just wasn't strong enough to withstand the tension on the loom. I could probably put it on my Louette Jane, to be totally honest. The Jane, you can the tension, I can really fine tune it that it would be able to handle something like this. My Ashford 16 shaft table loom, probably same thing, but I sort of stashed it, put it on the back burner. I was in the middle of working on one of my Ontario hand weavers and spinners master weaver units at the time, so my loom was taken anyways, and I ended up stashing this. This is just an unbelievably huge amount of yarn, and when I went to skein it for this project, I was winding and winding and winding just one of these hanks, and I was surprised at truly how much yardage there was. And unfortunately I didn't actually take a yardage count, I just wound it up. But I will do it with whatever's left and I'll calculate the grist and figure out kind of what it was. But it was a huge amount of yarn. It's about 28 wraps per inch, so it's finer than what's called for in the pattern. And it's just been in my stash, and like I said, it's a huge amount of yarn. So this is what it looks like up close. It's truly that singles look. It's got that low twist to it. It's really lovely yarn. So one of the other things that I spun last year was this Hello Yarn. It's from the Hello Yarn Fiber Club from some time in the past. I'm actually not sure when it is from. I had a whole bunch of these in my stash from when I was a member of fiber clubs back in the pandemic, and I'd had this in my stash for quite a long time. When I spun it up as singles, and the idea was that it was going to be combined with some other stuff, and I was going to weave all of this yarn together, and I haven't done anything about it, partially because I love these colors, and I was really torn about what to do with this yarn. So in the end, this yarn came out as approximately 736 yards prior to washing. So I'm not totally sure what it was post-washing, but that's what it was pre-washing. It was 115 grams. I've got more than enough for the full-sized Attune shawl. And so that's what I did. I cast on the Attune shawl. So this is my start. These are the two wound up into their fancy balls, and this is the start of the Attune shawl. So if you haven't seen the Attune shawl up close, or you haven't seen it on our community participation when I've done that every week, there will be more in community participation today to show you guys what some of you are knitting and what some of you are making. You cast on a garter stitch tab. If you haven't done this technique before, it's pretty straightforward. You cast on, you knit a certain number of stitches, and then you pick up a certain number of stitches along the side of the tab, and that creates the beginning of your shawl that will grow from there. With a traditional shawl that's a traditional triangular shawl, generally this center stitch will go straight. It'll go straight up here, and it'll sort of be like the spine of the shawl, and you'll be increasing in 4 places every time, here, 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 and here. But because Andrea's pattern has you increasing more on this side than on this side, based on the pattern, this side grows quite a bit quicker than the brioche side. I have to admit, I love brioche. I kind of wish it was growing a little bit quicker, but as the shawl gets bigger, that'll fill in. It'll be really pretty. So this is kind of like a faux brioche that you do. It's sort of like it's not really garter. It's kind of like a modified rib kind of. And you get this gorgeous play of the colors in the hand spun. And then on the brioche side, of course, brioche always looks wonderful when you've got that changing color in behind. Because this is singles, very, very, very clean color as it's transitioning through. Let me see if I can zoom in on this camera a little bit. There you go. You can see how like the color is just transitioning really cleanly. There's no barber poling or marling or anything, and that's the effect of the singles. So just really pretty and really satisfying. I have to say, a very, very satisfying knit thus far. So because my yarns are about 28 wraps per inch versus like what's called for in the pattern, which is sort of like 14 to 16, sort of a sport weight, I did downsize my needles. Also for wearability with the singles, it just gives it a little bit more strength, and it's a little teeny tiny bit denser of a fabric. So in the pattern, she calls for 3.5 millimeter needles, or a US size. I'm trying to remember my US sizing so that I can tell you guys, and I'm so not used to US needles and UK needles because I work in millimeters for my needles, but it's a US size. So I'm working in a 3.5 millimeter needle. So it's a US size 5. I will get there. I will get there. It's a US size 5. I did the garter tab. Sometimes what you can do sometimes what happens with garter tabs when you're knitting is when you're starting them, if you start with the same needle here, sometimes it kind of creates like this bulkiness here that sometimes just the garter tab doesn't lay straight. It'll kind of bulb like it's just a little bit bulbous. It's like there's too much happening in here. And then when you start the body of the shawl, there's like this kind of blip that develops because there's just too much density in here. So sometimes what you can do, that hasn't happened here because my yarn is so fine, but what you can do is if the pattern calls for, let's say 4 millimeter needles, a US size, is that US size 6? Yes, US size 6. Then you can actually downsize to a US size 5 or a 3.5 millimeter needle, so that when the shawl is finished, this sits straight, and there's no sort of like bulbous kind of effect that happens here. And it's just because on the slightly smaller needles, everything's just a little tiny bit smaller, and it compensates for the fact that sometimes this is a little bit too much happening in here. You end up with sort of this loop. That happened with several of my worsted weight shawls that I've knit over the years, and it's one of those things that I found out how to fix it down the road, and I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. And ever since, I always downsize and use at least one size smaller of a needle, if not two, for this garter stitch tab. But for this shawl, I didn't bother because I'm working in such fine yarn. I'm working on 2.75 millimeter needles, which is a US size. Oh, did you know that the Addi Turbos do not give the US sizing? They only give the length, and they give the size of the needle, but they don't actually say what the US sizing is or what the UK sizing is. They only give the metric. That's so interesting. I've never noticed that before. Anyhow, I'm using a 2.75 millimeter needle, and I did not downsize for that garter tab. I'm just telling you guys, for those of you who haven't heard of that trick before, and you can use it if you want. So it's a US size 2 is 2.75 millimeter needle. The other reason why I did that is because I am going to make this, I'm not sure I'm going to make it huge, but I would like to have it as a fairly decent size because I would like to use up as much of this as I could. So on the smaller needles, it'll use a little bit more yarn, it'll be a little bit denser, and with the singles, it'll wear a little bit better. And you can see that, like, there's areas of my singles that weren't super even. There's little areas that are kind of a little bit, they didn't draft quite as consistently, but as the shawl grows, that'll be hidden. So yeah, that's my big cast on this past couple of weeks. This is 2 weeks of knitting. It's only because I haven't sat and worked on it, but I did sit and work on it a couple of evenings when I was just so done. I was so tired. My leg was hurting so much, and I just sat quietly and worked on it, and it was really, really nice to have that moment of just chill time. So all right, let's go into community participation since we missed it last episode, and that'll round out the show. There I am. Hi everyone. I was like, where am I? I'm not on the screen. All right, so this is all of our community stuff that people are working on throughout the year. As I mentioned already, we were just talking about the Attune shawl for quite a while. You guys know the dates. You need to cast off by September 15th. Please don't forget to throw your stuff in the Ravelry FO thread, and then you can be entered for prizes. We've got some patterns to give away. I've got some fiber to give away. Giselle, who's a member of our community, she offered up some fiber from her stash, and she's got some luxurious stuff, and she's letting you guys pick. So definitely get your stuff in. So this is from Mary Jo. She decided to swatch this week, even though she hasn't finished spinning all of her contrast color. I'm sure by now she has finished spinning. The photo has the dark gray main color showing, just beautiful. So that would be, if her dark gray is her main color, then that is the right side of the shawl. But if it's not, and she wants the blue hand spun to be the right side, then the other side, then this is the wrong side. So I'm not totally sure. My guess is that this is the right side because the brioche is going off to the right, the spine of the shawl, same as mine, but just beautiful. I love that subtle low contrast, just beautiful, Mary Jo. This is from Gail. She's been working really hard on this because she's cast on a first Attune shawl and she wasn't liking a couple of things about it, and so she cast on another one. So what she wasn't loving about it was the same thing that I experienced. The needle size was too big, so it just means her hand spun was a little bit finer. So same as me, she had to downsize needles, and she did the same as me. She went down to 2.75 and she's much happier with the stitch definition. And then number two, she didn't care for the lighter color creating the garter band because she found it just stood out too much. And so she changed to her colorful yarn and then switched to a neutral for the contrast color. Just beautiful, Gail. Love this. Her and Dana hang out sometimes, and I'm always so jealous when they get together. She also pointed out a huge problem, and I'm so grateful to her because I had thought all this time that when I modified all of the stuff down below in the down bar here on YouTube with all the discounts and all the stuff, that the Brother Drum Carter discount code was showing up, and it wasn't. So I have since modified it. I've added it. Those of you who watch the Wool Circle and are part of the Wool Circle, I put it in on those videos as well. For anybody who's watching back episodes since the beginning of June, I went back. So I'm really sorry about that. If you've been looking for the discount code that is associated with woolen spinning as part of Brother Drum Carter, it's now in the down bar. And so thank you, Gail, for catching that. I never would have, I would have missed it. This is beautiful. This is from Amy. She finished. She loves this shawl. She's not a spinner, but she used a Spin Cycle in 3 shades plus Abundant Earth Salt Water for the main color. It's very cozy and I can't wait to wear it. And don't forget, Amy, to share it in the FO thread. Love the colors of this. Beautiful. This is from Mario. I love this photo. His smile just lights up the room. I finished my shawl. It was so fun and it is so comfy and wearable. Just beautiful. I love the colors that he chose. That dark blue in the brioche, just beneath his chin there, it's just gorgeous. And it's high contrast, but it's not like jarringly high contrast. And those subtle blues and teals and yellows in the contrast color just work beautifully with that solid blue. Solid color choices. Love that, Mario. And don't forget to share it in the FO thread. This is from Laura. I got half of my yarn finished and started knitting it because we're going on vacation this coming weekend. I hope you had a wonderful time away, Laura. And she wanted to take it with her. I'm sure she made tons of progress. My thinner yarn is a 2-ply and it is plied very loosely, and I don't love it, but it's fine once I knit with it. That is so often the case, you guys. If you are newer spinners and you finish off a yarn, I'm not saying Laura is, but for those of you who are, and you're a newer spinner and you've got this yarn that is kind of sort of lackluster in the skein, don't worry about it. Knit with it. Doesn't matter. If you've got the right gauge and you've got the right fabric and the right pattern, your yarn will sing. And it's the joy of knitting with your hand spun outweighs anything in the skein that you're not super keen on. And it's interesting because Laura had, I think it's the same Laura. We have quite a number of Lauras in our community. But I think it's the same Laura. She had posted that, like, how do you make your skeins photograph so beautifully? And and sometimes they just don't. Sometimes they just don't look that great in the photo. And then you go to work with it and to knit with the yarn and you're like, this is amazing. So knit with your stuff, you guys. Use your hand spun. Okay, soapbox over. This is from Michelle. Finished my Attune shawl. Again, another low contrast Attune shawl that is so effective. It's just beautiful. This was fun to knit, perfect for using hand spun. It's been a great watching everybody spinning and yarn come together and seeing their shawls grow. It's big and squishy and comfy and warm. This is my first spin along, knit along, and I loved being part of the group. Thank you. Oh, that's awesome, Michelle. And don't forget to share it in the FO thread. Beautiful, beautiful work. All right, Spindle Spun Summer goes all the way until the evening of the autumnal equinox. So technically we are still in the summer in early September here. I always find that kind of odd, like in Canada, and I'm sure it's like this in parts of the US, but very much in Canada, I've talked about this on the show before, there's very much this feeling that Labor Day is the end of summer, like no holds bar. And of course, from a season's perspective and from the way that we divide up the calendar, that's not the case. But in Canada, it's very much summer ends. It's a new year come that Tuesday after Labor Day weekend, and which is the first weekend in September for those of you who don't have a Labor Day weekend. And so the Monday is a super stat, and then the Tuesday is the first day, usually back to school, back to work, all those things. Like summer is over. It's a very like Canadian thing. And they did a whole thing on CBC Radio, our Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. It's our equivalent of NPR kind of thing, but bigger. They talked about it. They did a whole thing on it a number of years ago. And New Year in Canada is actually more closely associated with that Tuesday after Labor Day than New Year's Day on January 1st. Isn't that interesting? It's just a cultural thing. It's just something that's developed with when kids go back to school and vacations and people taking the summers off. And yeah, it's super interesting. But our spindle spun summer is not over. So keep those spindles out and keep on spinning. This is from Deb. I shared the spindle photos a couple of episodes ago, and this is the finished yarn. My first finished spindle spun skein of the season, merino silk and tencel. In the end, I decided to chain ply it so that I could use it for the Attune shawl, and I love it. This was the most attractive braid. It was given to me presumably because the owner didn't like it either. So it was not the most attractive braid, sorry. It has turned into a beautiful yarn. Absolutely, Deb, has it ever. Today I might blend up some blue Corriedale to use as the contrast color. I have some silk and tencel that I could blend with it, so the whole shawl would be drapey and luxury and luscious. Absolutely, Deb, you should do it. Gorgeous. I love this skein of yarn. I wonder if the fact that the yellow and the blue are, so like they're the complements. I wonder if it's just a little bit too jarring, like just that sort of blah of the yellow and the blue, that in the braid of fiber it was maybe just a little bit too much. But then when you spin it and you spread those colors out and you the blue becomes more of like a sprinkling and the yellow grounds it all, maybe that is why it feels a bit more balanced. Christine, beautiful spinning, Christine. I love seeing her photos. Her spinning is just gorgeous. I finished the alpaca yesterday and continue with the English 56. Beautiful. Gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. This is from Becca. She's working on her spinning certificate as part of, she lives in Scotland, and she's been working on her guild certificate. So she's been working on all of these just incredible fibers over the last couple of years. The last day of Tour de Fleece, first day of Tour de Fleece Femme. I think I will work on this silk for the rest of it. After playing with silk waste the other day, I found a brick of silk that I had forgotten about. After buying it from a D-stash, I almost never spin 100% silk in this form, so it's really good practice. And this is all part of her guild certificate. Beautiful. Look at that silk brick, how it just balloons out. It literally comes as a brick, and then when you start to pull it apart and start to open it up, it just goes poof. So very cool. World of Wool carries it if you're curious to see what they look like. This is from Florence. She's always got so much happening and so many things being made. I love it. My Tour de Fleece challenge was accomplished, having spun or knit Tour de Fleece yarn as it happened every day. Beautiful. Gorgeous spinning, Florence. That white yarn, beautiful. And I love your socks. I can't wait to see them finished. This is from Crystal. She spun so much. And of course I shared with you that thick and thin, she was going for the vertical lines and stuff of that black and white yarn down there. So that's the swatch that she had done. I talked about that on the podcast a little while ago. Final yardage will have to wait until I finish plying, but here's my finish line shot. In total, I spun 8 full skeins, 1 mini, 2 bobbins of singles, 1 atrociously knitted swatch, 4 spindles of singles tragically omitted from the finish line photo, and 8 bats also tragically missing. All in all, a fabulous tour, but wait, there's more. I'll be continuing to spin with the ladies, so this pile will be getting bigger. Amazing, Crystal. So she went on to do Tour de Fleece Femme. And Crystal was on Woolen Spinning Radio September 1st. August 1st. So definitely wherever you catch your podcast and listen to all of your audio podcasts, be sure that you listen to the episode with Crystal. She's an absolute pleasure and loves hand spun. She is such a cheerleader for all things spinning and hand spinning. So definitely go back and listen to that episode of Woolen Spinning Radio. You can get it on Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, like wherever you listen to your podcasts. This is from Diana. I love these colors, and she photographed it on this beautifully woven, I think that's a tea towel if my memory serves, but it's just gorgeous the way she photographed this. Spinning and then plying on my Inoxia spindle. I love the ease of swapping out bobbins, and those Inoxia spindles, I've talked about them on the show before. Episode, I think 268, I talked about these spindles that Mai makes, and I have the Lazy Kate to play around with when we get back from Ontario. But basically these bobbins fit on the shaft of the spindle, and then you can swap them out as they get full. So I'm excited to play with them when we get back. And Mai also got the kids started with some of her weaving looms that she's been doing, and they are phenomenal. I can't wait to share that more about those with you guys in the fall. It's been a bit too crazy this summer, but the kids have been playing with them and they are just awesome. Very cool. This is from Kristen. Isn't this phenomenal? The reason why this is in Spindle Spun Summer, wait for it, is because this just finished this knit. It's the leaf top by the Knit Stitch with my Tackly spun cotton. She spindle spun all of this cotton to make this sweater. I love it, and may knit another in natural green, a perfect top for Florida summers. Gorgeous, Kristen. I've been excited to share this with you guys because it's just an awesome testimony to what we can create with our spindles, and Kristen did an absolutely beautiful job, and this is all cotton spindle spun on her Tackly. Amazing. So fun. All right, this is our general mix and shares, all the things that you guys are making in the Ravelry group, sharing in the Slack channel, all the things everywhere. This is from Becca. This was a breed and color study yarn. She finished a hat during Maker Morning. It's all blocked and dried, which is taking ages with these hot, humid, wet days. Wet, humid days. It's 4-ply worsted weight Targhee yarn, spun and plied with my usual suspended spindles. The fiber was dyed by Katrina. The hat is a free pattern from Joji Locatelli. I have used multiple times. Shown with a folded brim up or under for slouch. Isn't this fantastic? I love this sweater. Or sweater. I keep saying sweater. I mean toque. Absolutely gorgeous, and gorgeous colors. And of course, Becca's knitting and spinning is just on point. Beautiful. This is from Christina. I love these little mitts. Below are some fingerless mitts I've just completed, made with hand spun yarn, one strand of 2-ply merino silk, held with a 2-ply strand of kid mohair that I finished spinning, and the last of the plying while on a little retreat with Florence, hosted by Florence at her home. So far, the yarn has been 3 unsuccessful pullovers, so I'm happy to have finally found the perfect use. I'll buy it a small amount. Almost 18 months later, we had fun. I love it when people talk about meetups that they've been able to do it, like because they met in the woolen spinning community. It's amazing how many people have actually been able to connect, which is very heartening and very cool. And for Christina and Florence, they live in New Zealand. So to be able to connect with each other has been awesome, because I don't think that either of them have a particularly large community where they both live. So that's awesome. I love it. This is from Diane. She is a blue ribbon winner. It's done in the nick of time. Vintage glass buttons to the rescue. They look amazing on this pullover. I shared Diane's finished yarn with you a little while ago. It was that gorgeous John Arbin. And of course it was this color, just absolutely beautiful. She headed out to the fairgrounds. She entered these, she had yarn that she entered as well, but this sweater was entered and she won first place. To be honest, there isn't a lot of competition. Doesn't matter, Diane, you still won, and it's beautiful. She got a $4 premium. Rolling in the dough. Love it. Beautiful spinning, beautiful knitting. Amazing sweater. Diane's gonna get a lot of wear out of this, a lot of wear. This is from Sue. I love her smile, just all smiles. Look at this sweater. My pride and joy. I don't know how to say this. Is it the Mercerina in Handspun Gradient from Hilltop Cloud? Isn't it incredible? Like, this is a great example of, she's taken a sort of classically handspun looking yarn, but matched it with a colorwork yoke and a knitted pattern where none of it is competing with each other. It's all in balance. It works. You've got the complement of the orange and the purple, the blue and the yellow, and it all is sort of moving downwards. It's very clever that the blue is at the top and the yellow is at the top and the orange is at the bottom and the purple is at the bottom, so they never actually touch one another. The yellow and the blue kind of blend a teeny tiny bit at the top, but nothing like overt. But it's very clever, and it's a good example where the colors in handspun often compete with the knitting pattern, and that's why we talk about like, oh, this pattern's great for handspun. It's like, well, it's not great for handspun. It's just a great use of that particular yarn with that particular aesthetic in that particular yarn pattern. It just works. There isn't too much competition between the patterning of the knitting and the patterning in the yarn, whether it's marling, which is barber pulling, color twisting, striping, whatever it is. And this is just an awesome example where Sue brought all of it together and rocked it. She absolutely nailed it. So well done, Sue. This one is very special and great for advertising and illustrating stranded color work, which is one of the classes I teach. Amazing, Sue. I love it. You did a beautiful job. And it's so much fun to feature you here. All right, we've got one weaving project that I had to share because I've shared the yarn before. This is Diana's blanket. It's fresh off the loom. It's mostly spindle spun, warp and weft. It's about 7 feet 6 inches long and 29 inches wide. Next is twist the fringe and wet finish. So this is it's a gift. I know that. I know she's gifting this. But it was a pack of fiber that I've shared on the podcast before in community participation. All of these colors were called Tutti Frutti, and they're from West Coast Color. And it's this roving that Lynn had processed, and it's literally the colors of the rainbow. So the color study that you can do as a result is, I mean, you could do anything with it. It's really lends itself to woolen spinning. Diana spindle spun most of this. I think almost all of it is spindle spun. She shared at Guild as she was progressing through the spin, like all the colors, and she combined shoulder colors so that she would get like the yellow green and the green the blue green and the all of the secondary and tertiary colors. She had the secondary colors, but she had to create the tertiary colors. That's what it was. And so your red orange, your yellow orange, your yellow green, yellow blue, and then your blue purple, and then your red purple. So she had to create all of those, but oh my goodness, beautiful. I love this, Diana. It turned out beautifully. I'm sure it's already gifted, but I'm hoping that I get to see it in person at Guild in September, but I might not be so lucky. Incroyable. Thank you so much, you guys, for sharing all that you do, and thank you for being here, and thank you for enjoying this premiere episode of Woolen Spinning Radio, Woolen Spinning. We will be back to our regular live streams with patrons in 2 weeks today. Next Tuesday, we have a wool circle that will be at the same time, same place, Tuesday at 10 a.m. for those who are interested in joining. Remember that the wool circle is open to those if you want to try a 1-week free trial to see if it's for you. Next week would be a great opportunity to attend your first stream of the wool circle and see if it's something that fits for you. So I hope to see you next Tuesday at 10 a.m. And if not, I'll see you the following Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific for the regular show. And hopefully after our trip to Toronto, I'll have some things to share with you that I worked on while we were gone. I haven't decided if I'm going to take my Bosworth spindles yet. I'm still on the fence, but we'll see. All right, until next time, happy spinning, everybody. Happy making. If you're traveling, stay safe. Have a wonderful Labor Day weekend for those who are sort of having that last hurrah of summer. And I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Bye, everyone. A very special thank you to Elaine, Anne, Tori, Amanda, and Lisa. Thank you so much. We couldn't do this without you.